Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution, popularly known as the Commerce Clause, grants Congress the power to regulate interstate commerce. Congress has used this power to regulate commercial goods, products, activities, and travel between states. In the modern era, the United States Supreme Court has interpreted this power broadly, allowing Congress to regulate in-state activities that have a substantial economic effect on interstate commerce. In the 1960s, Congress used its Commerce Clause power to combat racial discrimination by passing the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Congress passed the act to prevent discrimination on the basis of race, sex, religion, or national origin. Title II of the Act granted a right of equal access to places of public accommodation that affect interstate commerce, including hotels and restaurants. On the same day in 1964, the court issued two decisions that addressed challenges to Title II of the Act. In Heart of Atlanta Motel, Inc. v. United States, the court upheld the constitutionality of Title II as applied to hotels. Then, in Katzenbach v. McClung, the court turned its attention to restaurants. Under the Act, a restaurant affects interstate commerce if it serves interstate travelers, or if a substantial portion of its food comes from another state. Ollie McClung owned and operated a local restaurant called Ollie's Barbecue in Birmingham, Alabama. Ollie's Barbecue was located next to an interstate highway, and 46% of the food served at the restaurant came from another state. Since its opening in 1927, Ollie's Barbecue had refused to seat and serve black people. This violated the right to equal access under the Civil Rights Act. McClung filed a complaint against the federal government, which was represented by Attorney General Nicholas Katzenbach in the United States District Court for the Northern District of Alabama. McClung argued that the act was unconstitutional as applied to his restaurant, which had virtually no effect on interstate commerce. The district court agreed, finding that there wasn't a close enough connection between discrimination at Ollie's Barbecue and the food purchased by the restaurant in interstate commerce. Katzenbach appealed the district court's decision directly to the United States Supreme Court. The issue on appeal was whether Congress had exceeded its power under the Commerce Clause by applying Title II of the Civil Rights Act to local restaurants. Writing the majority opinion, Justice Clark held that the court must uphold legislation enacted under the Commerce Clause when it finds that Congress had a rational basis for concluding that the regulated activity substantially affects interstate commerce. At the lower court hearings, evidence showed that black people spent less money in areas where racial discrimination was widely practiced. Also, restaurants that refused to serve black people had fewer customers and thus bought and sold less food through interstate commerce. Finally, black people were less likely to travel between states due to racial discrimination in restaurants. Therefore, based on this evidence, the court held that Congress had a rational basis for concluding that racial discrimination in restaurants had a substantial effect on interstate commerce. Title II of the Civil Rights Act, as applied to McClung's restaurant, was a constitutional exercise of Congress's commerce power. The district court's judgment was reversed. Justice Black concurred. Black wrote that the Commerce Clause, in conjunction with the Necessary and Proper Clause, gave Congress the power to regulate local entities that burdened the flow of interstate commerce. Justice Douglas also concurred. Douglas believed that Congress's power to enact Title II came from both the Commerce Clause as well as the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause. Douglas argued that basing the decision on equal protection grounds would have had a more definitive effect, because it could end discrimination in all places of public accommodation, regardless of their effect on interstate commerce. Finally, Justice Goldberg's concurrence found clear authorization from both the Commerce Clause and the 14th Amendment. Goldberg emphasized that the purpose of Title II wasn't to regulate commerce, but rather to protect human dignity against discriminatory conduct. Katzenbach v. McClung is significant for finding that Congress could use its commerce power to combat racial discrimination in places of public accommodation. This decision also promoted judicial deference to Congress's power under the Commerce Clause.